Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy, where we break down one of the many star systems in the Star Citizen universe and give you a little bit of insight into its creation, its construction, and some of the sort of planets that you could expect to find there. I'm your host, Dave Haddock. So today we're actually going to take a trip out to Banu country and have a look at the system known as Bacchus. Now, if you've been following Star Citizen for a while, this system should sound pretty familiar. This is one of the kind of original Banu systems that actually we had been talking about since the very beginning. And I was actually trying to figure out when we had announced it and went back through all my old notes. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but the first mention I could find, public mention of it I could find, was in the 6th installment of the Writer's Guide back in 2013. And so since then, obviously, the Banu culture has gone through kind of a lot of changes. As far as diving much deeper into exactly how they behave and sort of how they're structured and stuff like that. I mean, in the early days, they were pretty much set up as just being kind of a primarily trading culture. They, have basically been sort of humanity's first contact ever since we first ran into them, literally. And, we've never sort of had hostilities with them. They've always been super cool. And that's been pretty much it. And since then, although our team of artists have sort of explored kind of how they looked physically, there hadn't been a real kind of reveal of what we've been deciding upon the culture until the Defender sale, actually, where we did like a brochure of like sort of what to expect if you go into Banu space and stuff like that. And like with a lot of these types of brochures and stuff, it was a good opportunity for us to be able to really focus on and figure out and answer questions of how sort of we want the Banu to feel. So anyway, we'll just jump right in here and take a look at the system by jumping into our handy dandy star map here. So we are on Earth here, and let's zoom on out. I'm gonna go into 2D mode to make it a little bit easier. Zoom out, turn on some jump points. Okay, so this is the Sol system, as we are all intimately familiar with. And all the way down here is Bacchus. So it's right inside sort of the Banu Protectorate. It has 2 jump points that are connected to the Gedon system, which is also a Banu system, and the Garin system, which was the sort of site of the kind of horrific terraforming massacre that led to the downfall of the Messers. Bacchus as a system was sort of discovered in 2439, which is a bit of a misnomer because it wasn't really discovered. Basically, humanity's first contact with the Banu was in 2438, and then after they signed the sort of Interstellar Peace and Trade Accord, the Banu basically told us about some of their other systems. And so Bacchus as a system was more revealed than discovered. So we don't have that sort of like backstory of like, oh, so-and-so was tripping around and stumbled across a jump point, et cetera, et cetera. So let's jump right in here. So as you can see, right on the surface, it's going to be an interesting one because it is a binary star system. So we got 2 stars at the center here, and then 3 planets. So Bacchus 1, 2, 3, and an asteroid belt in the middle, just because we're funky that way. Let's see, let's head over here to Bacchus 1. So Bacchus 1, as you will see if you check out some of the info, is basically, it's a super Earth kind of smog planet type thing. So it's pretty uninhabited, probably not a great place to go and visit and hang out in because it's very close to the 2 stars here, as you can see. And interestingly enough, has a very, very sort of short solar day, which is we kind of calculated as to be roughly 11 standard Earth hours and an orbital period of 60 days, which is pretty fast. So it would be kind of trippy to be around. Moving on, Bacchus 2, located down here, is the only inhabited system in the planet, and might be the planet that basically the UEE theorizes the Banu might be originally from. Now, first thing you probably notice about that statement is that that's a UEE theory, that this is the Banu homeworld. The reality is that no one really knows. for sure. If you're wondering how that's possible, basically how can a species not know where they're from? One of the fun facts that we revealed, and one of my favorite things about the Banu, was that they have a very different relationship with history than we do. While humans are very keen on tracking sort of lineage and the identity of people who make discoveries, the Banu actually don't really care that much. They actually care more about the discovery more than the person who made it. So the example I always kind of go back to is if you think at some point, basically a Banu engineer developed a thruster that was better than the kind of the contemporary thrusters that were being used at the time. So everyone goes, wow, this thruster is really cool. It's more efficient, it's more powerful, it's whatever sort of quality it has that sort of makes it excel over the sort of existing technology, they latch onto and they go, okay, this is going to be our new thruster design. So they maintain the sort of design of the thruster, how to build it, how it works, all that type of stuff. But the actual sort of name of or importance of who designed it sort of gets lost. So basically they kind of they'll pass down the design, but after a certain amount of time, no one kind of remembers who built it because the thruster is sort of the important thing that matters. So basically it's fun. It puts a nice little spin on them as far as a culture that makes it feel a little bit more alien to us. And it's a slight degree of separation, but it really adds a lot of character to it, which is really fun. So anyway, you take that thinking and that approach to history, and you multiply it by the fact that currently we're sort of thinking that the Banu have a relatively shorter lifespan than humans do. So there's kind of a much faster turnover rate as far as sort of generations go. So you have more generations that have passed since they've basically been expanding out among the stars and among different star systems and stuff like that. And so at a certain point, it just sort of, that information of where they originally came from kind of slips into history, and no one really knows or cares kind of where they came from. So, if you basically asked a Banu like where the home world was, they would probably respond with whatever planet they were born on, or correct you if they were born on a spaceship. But again, it's just sort of a fun, interesting thing about the Banu and how they view the world. And also as a fun sidestep, we've sort of expanded that to the idea that it expands to contracts as well. So the Banu has these sort of guilds that they operate on called Sulis, and so if you form a business arrangement with a Suli and then the Suli changes ownership because the original owner dies, then you have to renegotiate that contract with the new one because they are considered a new entity. So by extension, we sort of joke around that the interstellar, peace and trade accord that the Banu signed with the humans has to be renegotiated every, couple decades, because basically there's a new power structure, and who were like, well, we didn't sign that old one, so we got to do it again, which I imagine would be super frustrating for our government. Anyway, so getting back on topic, probably the reason why the UEE, who are actually, the other joke is that the UEE and the Xi'an are probably the best chroniclers of Banu history, because they do place an emphasis on people and stuff like that. So the best historical lineage as far as that type of stuff would probably be either UEE or Xi'an. Anyway, so why Bacchus 2? Why is this the leading candidate for the Banu homeworld? Well, they have a practice known as gatherings, which, to give again another brief overview, the Banu sort of arrange themselves in sort of what's the Banu Protectorate is a series of systems under Banu control, and all of the planets sort of operate like city-states. So they all have kind of their own kind of unique rules and sort of way that they do things. But if the situation arises that basically not threatens necessarily, but affects the entire species, something that they need to kind of come together on to make a decision about, i.e., first contact with humans, that type of thing, they would need to call a gathering, which would be a collection of all of the sort of leaders of these various planets to get together, present the situation, and then they figure out a way to move forward. And so Bacchus 2, for example, is the site of where they host these gatherings. So there seems to be some kind of import on the world, and so basically the UE strongly suspects that that's why it might be their home world, because they're like, there has to be a reason why they're having it here. So maybe that's it. It's also actually probably good to mention as well that, looking at the star map and stuff like that, we have Bacchus One, Bacchus Two, Bacchus A, Bacchus B, all that type of stuff. And we don't have any alien words. They probably will get alien names once we actually kind of develop the language a bit more. We've just been trying to minimize it so we don't kind of constrain the construction of the language. So, we could kind of come up with kind of sort of nonsense words, but we don't want to kind of imply a sort of syntax or vernacular or stuff like that to the language before it gets properly developed. Moving on from Bacchus 2, while I said that that was the only inhabited planet in the system, it's not the only population center. So particularly if you poke around some of the other Banu systems, you'll see these little flotillas over here, which are basically, the idea was that these would be sort of sprawling space stations that would act as trading hubs for people passing through the system. So this is the Bacchus Flotilla, which again would probably get sort of a more Banu appropriate name once we kind of work out the language. But again, the idea is that this would be sort of like a massive sort of floating marketplace. I kept imagining something similar to like the raft from Snow Crash, if you've read that. If not, I highly recommend it. But again, we'll sort of see how it develops once the sort of art team really kind of sinks their teeth into it. And so moving on, and then finally, you got your asteroid system here. Damn it. Did it again. So you got the asteroid system here. And then last but not least, we have Bacchus 3, which is sort of a massive gas giant that's all by its lonesome out there on the fringe of the system. So that's basically Bacchus in a nutshell. Again, some of the details about the various planets might shift once the artists and designers actually begin to build out the system. But sort of the core idea that for this place is that it's going to be one of the sort of central hubs of the Banu Protectorate. Even though it might not technically be the sort of homeworlds of the Banu, we're kind of viewing it as sort of one of the main nexus points for the Banu Protectorate. So from a meta level, it kind of is their homeworld, even though it's not legitimately their homeworld. But we want it to be that sort of like that classic example of like the vibrant, dangerous Banu worlds where everything has a price. There's like that possibility for adventure and mystery and all that kind of cool stuff going on. So yeah, I would highly recommend, if you're not familiar with it, I would definitely poke around here and poke around the star map in general. Of course, if you have questions or comments, feel free to track me or any of the other lore team down in the Ask a Dev section on Spectrum. And as always, a big thanks to our subscribers whose contributions allow us to do this extra level of community engagement. And of course, a big thank you to all of our backers who are helping us build this amazing game. And that's pretty much it. This has been Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm Dave Haddock, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.